Hello, this is Clyde, and a quiet welcome back to the dusty Codex. Today, we journey to a remote mountain pass in Central Asia, where two massive empires, the largest on Earth, clashed in a battle that few have heard of, but which forever changed the course of human history. We are always curious to know where our stories are traveling to, and where your corner of the world is. Please, take a moment to let us know in the comments where you are watching from today. The two empires were the vast, expanding Chinese Tang Dynasty, then a superpower that controlled the entire Silk Road, and the equally immense and expanding Abbasid Caliphate, the new power of the Islamic world, fresh from seizing control of the Middle East. The conflict was a direct clash of East versus West for control of Central Asia's trade routes and small tributary kingdoms. The resulting Battle of Talas, or the Battle of saw the Chinese armies under the Korean-born General Gao Xianzhi decisively defeated. The immediate consequence was clear. The Abbasid victory halted Chinese expansion westward forever. But the true world-changing consequence lay with the prisoners. Among the captured were skilled Chinese artisans, including papermakers. For centuries, China had fiercely guarded the secret of papermaking, which allowed their society to flourish intellectually, while the West relied on expensive, cumbersome parchment. In the aftermath of Talas, this secret was transferred to the Islamic world. From there, it traveled across the Middle East, North Africa, and eventually reached Europe, changing human history forever. The stage for the conflict was the Silk Road, the most vital economic artery of the ancient world. The stakes were nothing less than total control over the flow of silk, spices, and technological secrets between East and West. The Tang Dynasty was at the peak of its military power. Under the command of General Gao Xianzhi, the Chinese had successfully subjugated several powerful kingdoms in the Tarim Basin and pushed their influence deep into the Pamir Mountains. They saw Central Asia as their natural sphere of influence. To the west, the Abbasid Caliphate had just completed its own revolution, overthrowing the Umayyad dynasty and moving its capital to the new city of Baghdad. The Abbasids inherited and controlled the western end of the Silk Road and were rapidly expanding their territory and their sophisticated intellectual culture eastward. The flashpoint was the Fergana Valley, a small, strategically vital region where the Oasis kingdoms, Turkic and Sogdian, played the two giants against each other. When one of these small kingdoms appealed to the Abbasids for help against the aggressive demands of General Gao Xianzhi, the great powers were set on a collision course. General Gao Xianzhi led a formidable force of around 30,000 to 40,000 men. This army was a mix of elite Tang regulars and powerful, fearsome mercenary troops, Korean, Turkic, and Karluk soldiers who were loyal only to Gao. They were disciplined, well-equipped, and hardened by years of mountain warfare. The Abbasid force was slightly larger, estimated at 50,000 to 70,000 men. Their core strength lay in their heavy use of Khorasan, Persian, and Central Asian cavalry, who were famous for their speed, mobility, and deadly use of the bow and lance. Unlike the Chinese, their army was also unified by a shared, potent Islamic faith. The two armies finally met in July 751 AD along the Talas River near the modern-day city of Taraz. For 5 days, the immense armies clashed in a remote valley, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The battle was a brutal medieval stalemate of cavalry charges and disciplined infantry lines. The Chinese heavy infantry held the line against the Abbasid cavalry charges, absorbing the shock. The Abbasids lacked the heavy infantry to break the rigid Chinese formations. The battle hung in the balance, a pure test of endurance between the two greatest powers on Earth. The crucial factor, however, was not the imperial armies, but the local allies. General Gao Xianzhi had marched with a large contingent of Karluk Turkic mercenaries. The Karluks were nominally allied with the Tang, but their loyalty was always pragmatic and self-interested. The Abbasid commander, Ziyad ibn Saleh, or his agents, had been engaging in intense, covert diplomacy with the Karluk leadership. They promised land, gold, and a free hand in Central Asia if the Karluks would switch sides. On the 5th day of the battle, the Karluks made their move. They suddenly wheeled their forces and charged directly into the rear and flanks of the exhausted Tang army. This surprise attack shattered the discipline of Gao Xianzhi's main force. The Chinese line collapsed into a chaotic rout. The disciplined Tang army, attacked from both front and rear, was annihilated. General Gao Xianzhi and a small number of his staff managed to cut their way out and escape east, leaving the remainder of his army to be captured or slaughtered. The defeat of the Tang army was complete. Chinese expansion into Central Asia was halted forever, marking the historical boundary between the Islamic and Chinese worlds. But the battle's true significance was only just beginning to unfold in the aftermath. For centuries, China had guarded a secret more valuable than silk or gold, a secret that would fundamentally alter the course of human civilization. That secret was now scattered among the tens of thousands of prisoners taken by the Abbasid forces. If these stories, where military history pivots on a hidden technological secret, are what you seek, I invite you to subscribe to the Dusty Codex. Your support allows us to continue unearthing these profound moments that forever change the way the world communicates. Among the tens of thousands of prisoners marched west was a small group of artisans. Their trade was not in silk or jade, but in the most important industrial secret in the world at that time, papermaking. For nearly 600 years, since its invention by Kai Lun in the Han Dynasty, the Chinese had maintained a total monopoly on the production of paper. This simple material, made from plant fibers, rags, and bamboo, was the engine of their vast bureaucracy and their literary flourishing. Meanwhile, in the West, the Byzantine and European world still relied on cumbersome, expensive materials: clay tablets, wax boards, or, most commonly, parchment, the treated skins of sheep and goats. To create one Bible required a herd of animals. Knowledge was literally bound by the skin it was written on. The Abbasid Caliphate, centered in Baghdad, was experiencing its own intellectual golden age, but they were desperate for a cheaper medium. When the captured Chinese papermakers were brought to Samarkand, the secret was quickly put to use. The transfer of technology was astonishingly fast. The papermakers were not executed, they were prized. The secret of how to break down plant fibers, beat them into a pulp, and form them into sheets on a fine mesh screen was fully revealed. A paper mill was quickly established in Samarkand, a crucial nexus on the Silk Road. Within a few decades, paper production spread across the Caliphate, to Baghdad, then Damascus, and then, most crucially, to Cairo. The Arabs didn't just copy the technology, they improved it. They incorporated techniques that utilized linen and flax, leading to a higher quality, brighter and smoother paper than the original Chinese versions. The impact on the Islamic Golden Age cannot be overstated. Suddenly, knowledge was cheap, accessible, and easily stored. It fueled the massive translation projects of the House of Wisdom in Baghdad and allowed the rapid dissemination of advances in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. For centuries after Talas, the Islamic world zealously guarded the secret, just as China once had. Paper, however, was inevitable. It was simply too good and too cheap to remain contained. The secret finally breached the European wall through military conquest. The first paper mills in Europe appeared in Islamic Spain, Al-Andalus, around the 10th century. When Christian kingdoms conquered cities like Valencia and Toledo, they discovered vast libraries filled with this strange, cheap, white material. The technology spread slowly at first, but inexorably. The first major paper mill in Christian Europe was established in Fabriano, Italy, in the late 13th century. From there, it moved to France, Germany, and England. The availability of cheap, mass-produced paper arrived in Europe just in time for the greatest information revolution in history. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in the 15th century. Without cheap paper, Gutenberg's invention would have been little more than a novelty for printing expensive parchment Bibles. Paper was the material foundation that allowed the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the scientific revolution to spread knowledge rapidly and cheaply across the world. The Battle of Talas, a clash fought over geopolitical dominance in a remote mountain pass, became one of history's greatest technological transfers. The political outcome, the end of the Tang Dynasty's western expansion, was significant, but the true, enduring legacy was a byproduct of failure. General Gao Xianzhi failed to guard his western frontier, but in doing so, he lost something more valuable than any fortress or territory, the secret that would make written communication accessible to all. The Battle of Talas is a perfect monument to the unpredictable course of history, a reminder that the world's greatest revolutions are often unintended consequences, born not in grand halls of government, but in the dusty, chaotic fog of war.